Just Business with Steve Thomas and John Worrell. And now, here's your host, Chris Leary.
Support for It's Just Business comes from Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-belt grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Ready or not, the holidays are here. Still struggling to come up with the perfect gift for that special someone in your life? The answer is Manscaped. The Manscaped Perfect Package 2.0 is the perfect gift this holiday season. It includes the Lawnmower 2.0 trimmer, the Crop Preserver anti-chafing deodorant, and the Crop Reviver toner spray, which is infused with cooling aloe vera to keep you from sweating, sticking, and smelling. Trust me, she will love the manly scent of these products. It even comes with a pair of Manscaped boxer briefs to keep you feeling fresh all day long. Manscaped has redesigned the electric trimmer. Their new Lawnmower 2.0 has proprietary advanced skin-safe technology to prevent nicks and snags, has a rechargeable battery, and it's waterproof so you can use it in the shower. Stop using the same trimmer down below that you use on your face. So what are you waiting for? Head over to manscaped.com now and get 20% off your order and free shipping by using the code BIGHEADS. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Promo code BIGHEADS.
Hello and welcome to It's Just Business on the Hogstein Network, the show where we look at the dollars and cents of the sports, media, business, entertainment, industrial complex, here to wade through the morass and the schemes and the enterprise of it all is co-host Steve. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing just fine. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was fine, behind us. How about you?
I did it. See, Thanksgiving was an interesting one for me because this was the first year that I actually tried to do the meal by myself. Meaning, I had to create a Thanksgiving meal. I don't cook. For anybody who knows me, I can't cook anything. I can microwave the heck out of everything, but I can't cook anything. And so, I thought, man, what do I do? We're gonna, we have to have a family Thanksgiving thing. So I ended up going. I sort of surrendered. I went to the grocery store. Ordered turkey from them and a bunch of the sides and everything we need. And then I come to find out, and I thought what they were going to do is just deliver everything done, and I could basically just serve it. Well, no, it turns out I had to cook everything, like heat it all up for like an hour. And so that, it was almost bordering on cooking, which kind of bummed me out,
So you're saying that the problem was it didn't come hot?
Yes. So I thought I would figure I could get it home, maybe microwave it, for a minute to kind of reheat it. No, it was fully cooked. Like the turkey was fully cooked but cold. And so then I had to cook this turkey anyway, which is what I didn't know how to do in the first place. It just took less time, But I respect people who throw those Thanksgiving meals together because that was a hassle of which I don't want in my life. If I could have just done the Hungry Man TV, Thanksgiving Day special and gotten away with it, I probably would have. But it came out well. At the end of the day, it came out well, and everyone's happy, and so that was good.
So next year, then the challenge is you have to actually cook a turkey from scratch. It's actually not hard.
No. See, that takes hours and hours and hours. Driving to Kroger, bringing it home is much easier.
The dirty little secret is that cooking a turkey is actually ridiculously easy.
Except it takes time. How many hours does it take to cook a turkey in an oven?
Yeah, it depends.
I don't even know.
It depends on how big it is. I did a 16-pound one. It took about 4 hours. Not too bad. But you just put it in, check on it intermittently. It's not like you're doing anything.
The truth of the matter is the turkey I've had that's probably the best I've ever had is fried turkey.
No, it is good. But
I just don't know how to do that. I'd be afraid I'd blow the house up.
You have to have the equipment, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you can buy those fryers.
Yeah.
I'm just afraid I would blow the house up because I don't know what I'm doing with it,
Yeah, people don't have it properly thawed, then the extra moisture is the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was okay, and what I got criticized for by others, not people in my house, I didn't do dessert. Because I don't like things. No one in my house likes traditional Thanksgiving dessert. The pies, and nobody was going to eat that. And so to me, you know, there's just no reason to have, pecan pie and apple pie. Like our buddy Alex from Hogstye has got this huge list of weirdo desserts for Thanksgiving. It's like, we don't need any of that. We just had a meal and that was it. And if you want cookies, there's soft batch cookies in the cupboard.
What I know about you, Steve, is that's already about as gourmet as it's going to get.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Definitely. It definitely is.
Oh, Lord. My wife and I have Thanksgiving dinner down to a collaborative science. So we kind of are on autopilot in a good way. We don't have to think about it too much.
If you had a 16-pound turkey, you had a lot of people at your house.
No, we just had
That's a big turkey.
3 additional people than us. We just had 6 people.
Okay, that's what I mean. That's a lot of people. Because if there's more than one person that's not related to me, it's in my house, it's one too many people, in my book. So
yes, we had friends and guests.
Yeah. I told somebody just this week, I said, if you're going to invite me to Thanksgiving dinner, which, I hope you would because, I think I deserve it. But if you do that, please put me in a room by myself. So I can just eat in peace and not have to deal with a bunch of people.
Well,
which is not going to get me invited, of course. So
no, that people aren't really looking to do that. Well, here I'll shock and horrify you. Not only did we have guests, we allowed them to stay the night.
Oh my God, I would go to a hotel. If you're staying in my house, you and a bunch of people are staying in my house, I'm going to leave my house.
That's so funny. We're at our place upstate. So it's a little bit bigger, but we regularly pack the place full of people.
Oh my God, you and I would never get along in that regard.
Oh Lord, we go out of our way to make sure that we have, that people, have fresh towels, and it's almost like a Airbnb experience, except for that you have to live with us.
Yeah. See, and the other thing is I don't drink alcohol, so I don't have a clue what anybody would want, and but it's more just the fact that I don't want people around more than anything else. If you're not related to me, and even if you are related to me, I really don't want you around either. Unless you're immediate family, just let me come to you.
In a self-contained sealed chamber.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
This is the life of an introvert, Chris.
Yes, I realize that. And I guess I'm the life of an extrovert.
Yeah.
I like people around. All right, with that, we will jump into this week's topics. First, we're going to do some updates on some stories that we covered 2 weeks ago in the NFL. One is, we'll just do a little bit of a capper on the... there was no good name came out of this fight, right? There was no Malice in the Palace, no, right? No. There's no good nickname for that fight.
No, somebody needs to come up with something. It was in Cleveland, so... the killer shot in Cleveland, maybe.
Yeah, what are the mistake on the lake is what... isn't that what they generally call Cleveland sometimes?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
mistake on the lake, but it wasn't a mistake though.
No, I'm just trying to find out what could be our base for riffing on a good nickname. But yeah, if it hasn't emerged now, it's not gonna happen. Which may be the real crime out of this whole thing. But we had a little bit of a dust up where Myles Garret, and this really I think landed poorly, but he claimed that Mason Rudolph had said a racial slur, which is what this is through the context of his appeal, which was eventually denied to appeal the number of games. Part of his case, I guess, in the appeal was to claim that Mason Rudolph used a racial slur, and then that is what sparked his emotional reaction vis-a-vis the helmet, et cetera, et cetera. And like I said, the league, I guess, didn't buy it or didn't make any change to his suspension. He lost that. And it kind of didn't make even a big blip in the news cycle. In fact, even some, African American firebrand, sports writers sort of raised an eyebrow to that claim. So it kind of came and went, but that happened. So interesting end to that saga.
Yeah. Okay. So this is not a lawsuit. It's a collectively bargained grievance process, but a sort of a fundamental tenet of civil lawsuits, any lawsuit appeal, is that you cannot raise new evidence on appeal, and that's exactly what Myles Garret did. Well, first of all, number one, even if a racial term was used, that's no excuse for clocking someone in the head with a helmet. That's just insane. That's ridiculous. Punish Mason Rudolph for it, sure. If you want to fight him about it, sure. But I mean, you're basically threatening his life with this thing, and so I don't buy that anyway. But I think that part of the reason why it kind of landed with a thud is that the world collectively said, "Why didn't you talk about this right as it happened?" You should have said it in the locker room. Say, "Hey, this dude said, the whatever word to me, and that what caused me to flip out, and I was wrong, and I shouldn't have, but that's why I did it." If he'd said that in the locker room, or like the next day, or whenever he was, first interviewed, that would have landed with much more authority. And so you raise that for the first time in front of the appellate guy, James Thrash. The NFL did claim they investigated it. I don't know if that meant that they went to the broadcast audio, or they interviewed people or what. They didn't ever really say precisely, but they claimed to have found no evidence of it. And so, the claim was like within like half a day. So I don't know. They probably didn't, they didn't do too much research into it. But it's just the fact that he raised it on appeal really is what caused him to really go thud. And again, the other thing is, it's just not an excuse for clocking somebody with a helmet. Even if he said it, it was not an excuse. That's the problem with it.
Yeah, it's hard to. First of all, I want to remark, James Thrash, we see you. Congratulations on having a post-playing career. You were, Gibbs's favorite, right? Hard worker. Yeah, I think that's is where a lot of even the comments from people, who probably would have jumped to his defense very quickly were saying, not only doesn't make any sense, right? Because this guy was vilified for, 5 to 6 straight days of the NFL 24-hour news cycle. It had legs, right, for at least a week, at least till they started playing games again. And the idea that he wouldn't use that as a defense in the court of public opinion within 12 hours of it happening is insane, right? Because if you're that hot, you're that emotional, you felt aggrieved, it's some way is an explanation for your actions. I'm not talking about in a crime and punishment way, but just almost in like the aftermath of it, especially when it's still emotional. If it doesn't come out then, that's a weird look. Then even with like a day, a kind of a night's sleep, if you don't start to float that even before, so you at least have that in the ether before the NFL makes their decision on a suspension, even though they were pretty fast here, you'd still want to float that just to see if that, is a preemptive measure, not as an appeal measure, but as a way to see, like, can I bring my eventual suspension down and make the story a little bit more complex while they decide. That didn't happen. So yes, to have this basically as a kind of cold case admission of something that happened in the appeals process, I just think no one was really honestly buying. And quite frankly, the way the league has these things mic'd up these days, but players that have mics for television broadcast, not to mention the fact that, you watch a game live, if they pointed their overhead mics better, you could basically hear straight up calls. So I think the league probably had some way to sniff out that, and, now could they get it definitively? Probably not, but I am really willing to bet the league knew how to go and find if audio existed at all. And just on perception, if they heard something, they may not have changed the suspension necessarily, but they didn't want that coming out, and the fact that they did nothing. So I'm sure they did their due diligence.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we, the Hogsty, have enough equipment to where if we had wanted to, we could have taken the game audio and tried to isolate it and listen if we had really wanted to. So, and that's just us with fiddling around with laptop computers. So, the NFL definitely could do that if they wanted to, and they could pick up the phone and call every offensive and defensive lineman on the field if they really felt like it. So they did. They didn't find any evidence of it. Yeah, there's a core group of people who I think if Myles Garrett had said that up front, they would have automatically been sympathetic to him. He would, right off the bat, evidence or no evidence, they would have taken his side on it, And then there's another group of people who would have at least had a slightly different opinion about it. So, yeah, if he'd said it up front, I think he would have gotten a lot more hate. And then there's people who, like me, would have said, okay, it's awful that he said it, but that doesn't excuse your actions. It would have been, but point is, it would have been a totally different media cycle immediately. And if there's one thing we know about the NFL, it's that the NFL does a lot of things based on how the media cycle goes. So if he had said it up front, the NFL's punishment might very well have been different if he could have gotten the public even not on his side, but a bit more sympathetic to him. The whole thing might have gone differently for him. So I didn't buy it at all. I think he's a liar. And Mason Rudolph, for his part, denied he said it. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I watched a little bit of his college film. Don't know much about Mason Rudolph. He didn't strike me as the type of guy that would say that, but you never know. Who knows? Frankly, I believe Ben Roethlisberger would say something like that more so than Mason Rudolph, to be perfectly honest.
I mean, he's got a little bit of, he's got some stuff that you may raise an eyebrow at, but I don't think that, which again, if Myles Garrett says that in some impassioned locker room with 25 reporters around, at 11:45 on the Thursday night, then sure, you can go find every pseudo alt-right tweet of Mason Rudolph's or whatever, and that's just a radically different story, So, I'm sure we have different takes on him, but when Mike Freeman, the NFL writer Mike Freeman, is basically on Twitter going, nah, that didn't happen. And he came from the vantage point if that did happen, then most people in that situation, and he's an African American sports journalist, would be screaming that at the rafters that that night.
Yeah.
They're not waiting a week.
Yeah, I mean, and again, fundamentally, even if he did say that, that's not an excuse for his actions. And so I don't buy it. I think Myles Garrett's a complete liar and a fraud and a phony about it. Dude, just suck it up. You flipped out. You did something you shouldn't have. You're suspended. End of story. Take it like a man. That's my view of it.
Yeah, and from someone myself who probably gives a benefit of the doubt generally that those kind of things do and would and probably happened, this one also speaks of a cry wolf situation, which is just a really bad look from all angles.
Yeah. Now, the NFL did fine Mason Rudolph. Chris, you said before the show that it was $50,000.
50,000,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so he did get fined $50,000. I mean, the other big part of the story was whether they were going to suspend Rudolph. They didn't. They just fined him. My view of it was I don't think he really deserved to be suspended. At the end of the day, he didn't really do anything. He grabbed a helmet, and that was it. He didn't pull it off. He just grabbed a helmet. And then he chased after somebody, sure, absolutely. But to me, a finable offense is, you hit somebody, you kick somebody, you spit on somebody. All he really did is grab a helmet for a second or two, and he didn't pull it off. And so to me, a fine is the right thing. Not that, I mean, $50,000 is probably more to Mason Rudolph. He's on his rookie contract.
It's almost two game checks.
Yeah, so that's a significant hit, for a guy like Rudolph, who's not wealthy, like some of these other guys who have, veteran contracts. So he got punished in a way that he felt it. So I think that was enough.
Yeah, if I'd have been the Steelers, I may have been advocating to the league for a suspension of Myles Rudolph. Or Mason Rudolph.
Because didn't he throw 4 interceptions in that game?
Yeah, no, it was as bad a quarterback performance as you're going to see. If you're making a top 5 worst quarterback performances of the 2019 season, it's in there.
It's like, please take Mason Rudolph off our hands.
All right. So I think we probably heard the last of that story until at some point Myles Garret sits down for a long form interview. But at that point, I don't know that there's even necessarily more news. And I guess we'll see news. We'll see what they decide to do with him next season. And I suspect my prediction is he's on the field for game 1 of the 2020 season.
Yeah. I think he's got to go grovel at the altar of St. Goodell, and he'll do that, and then he'll be back, I would assume.
Yeah, and Cleveland Brown fans, if you're out there, you're not going to the playoffs anyway.
I think really and truly that's the whole reason why it was an indefinite suspension, is they wanted to make sure that Garrett did not come back for a playoff game. I think at the end of the day, that's what it was about.
Yeah, which is not an issue. So the second story that we talked about 2 weeks ago that continued to percolate, in fact, as often happens to us, the next 6 to 8 hours after we stop recording, the story takes on a whole new life, and that was the Colin Kaepernick workout and all this, that, and
I
the
call
other
it
thing.
a debacle, but
Yeah. So that happened. The long and the short of it is I get so bored at looking at what in each of the sides' arguments were, but they were red taping each other to death. It ended up being moved, I think, about 70 miles outside of its original location in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Some teams still made the trek. He kind of turned it into a bit of a, kind of a free publicity event. And then, of course, probably what was always going to be the result, honestly, in my opinion at least, is that, no team, rightly or wrongly, signed him. So it did nothing to advance or to, get him back in the league. And so the whole thing just looks like a giant, confusing circus with no real tangible outcomes.
Yeah, honestly, it made both sides look bad. There is a long story. We're not going to go into detail of it because it would take too long. But ESPN did a really, really a very good story. Howard Bryant is
ex-Post writer.
Yeah, the story is called Why Colin Kaepernick and the NFL Were Never Going to Work Out, dated November 26th. And again, we're not going to go into detail about it because it just takes too long. But the bottom line to it is that Bryant says in an article that the genesis of this was Kaepernick's team sent a message out to all the teams on October 10th saying he was ready to return to the NFL. And so as a result of that, Goodell, through some pressure from Jay-Z, and apparently there's a sociologist that the league employs called Harry Edwards. I've never heard of him before. They were pressuring Goodell to give Kaepernick a shot. And so this was Roger Goodell's way of giving Kaepernick an opportunity without putting the teams who would legitimately be interested in him, if any, into a major spotlight by inviting him to their facilities for a workout. Because then you'd have people like me. I mean, I would be upset at those teams if they invited him. And so that's what they're trying to avoid. And so that was the genesis of it. The problem, of course, was that the NFL apparently only gave him 2 hours to say yes or no to it, which is totally unreasonable. And then Kaepernick, for his part, this goes into detail, did in fact set up this high school scene days before and didn't tell anybody. So he knew all along what he was going to do. The NFL was trying to bully him into accepting this thing by their terms, and Kaepernick did set up the high school workout days before and didn't tell anybody, which, if nothing else, wasted everybody's time. So I think both sides are wrong. The other issue that interested me was the waiver issue. The NFL wanted him to sign a waiver. And just so everybody knows, every time a player comes into a facility for a workout, it normally happens on Tuesdays, you do have to sign an injury waiver. There is a waiver that you sign when you go to the combine or one of the regional combines. And this is a waiver that says if you're injured, you can't sue the NFL or anybody else. And so the parties did go back and forth on this waiver. And really and truly, what snapped to me about this eventually is that it's not a form, because the NFL has never done this before for any player ever. And so the NFL apparently took bits and pieces from their various waivers together and created sort of a new document. And the parties at the end of the day couldn't agree on it. That's the bottom line. Without going into detail, that's what happened. So it was a debacle. Colin Kaepernick turned it into a complete, debacle, and it was all about him. The NFL did this in a way that they kind of were trying to bully him into doing it on their terms, and predictably, as you said, Chris, nobody was interested in him in the first place. It was all a big waste of time.
Yeah, and I think this, and I don't necessarily think this was a good look or the right move, but I think that's what motivated Kaepernick's side, even to set it up even a couple days earlier, to have some kind of, hey, we're going to have a platform, right? We're going to have attention, we're going to have media. So I think once they probably in their camp made, some decision that this was not going to be materialize, they just switched it to getting half a day of the news cycle and being able to get microphones in front of them and et cetera, which is good. At this point, that's good for his brand and his initiatives, which is where his career is at this point. It's not, I'd like to see him back in the NFL. So I'm not even coming from a place of that, that I'm trying to keep him out. I actually think he should, and I think he could contribute, and I think he could probably start in today's NFL maybe at some point, but it doesn't matter. And so like they pivoted to something that was gonna help his brand, knowing that knowing what we know, that he's the chances are so low of him taking another snap in the NFL that they just took advantage of the cameras.
Yeah, I mean, and you and I are obviously on opposite sides of the Colin Kaepernick debate, but I don't think Kaepernick ever really. I don't think he wants to play in the NFL. If he does, I don't think he would turn it down if somebody gave him a contract. Don't get me wrong, but I think Kaepernick really and truly just wants to be a martyr. More than anything, a martyr to his cause. I think that's what really all of this is about. If he really wanted to play football, what he would just do is shut up and then quietly tell teams, I'm ready. I'm done with all this. I'm not saying he should do it. He can do your thing, Kaepernick. But I'm saying if he wanted to play in the NFL, he would have shut up and quietly done a workout with no hassle. That's what he would have done. I'm not saying he should have, so don't get me wrong, Kaepernick people out there. I'm saying if he really wanted to just be an NFL player, that's what he would have done. That's what he should have done. And he said he turned it into a big circus. So he didn't want to play football.
Or knew that it wasn't going to happen. But yes, I agree with that basic assessment. And to that end, because even if you think, as I do, that he could be a starter in this league, obviously not coming off the street, but I just think the game is caught up, and the coordinators are designing offenses that look more like what he ran anyway. Whatever. Interesting football debate. But if you believe that he could, then the reality is he's going to be a backup first. And what that whole scene that week basically showed to any team that was maybe even considering it was that you can't have this guy as your backup quarterback, because you don't need this much drama from that position, on your roster. You might put up with a starting quarterback. You might put up with it for, a 17 sack outside linebacker, et cetera, but you're not looking for that kind of media drama and circus from a backup player on your roster. And so if he, like, as did you say, if he cared, then you have to look like you're going to be a good citizen, because no team's going to take the risk. Now, if a team decided, some team that's down two quarterbacks, has a system that he could fit into, and you're like, screw it, we're going to try to save our season and bring this guy in off the street, and he's going to be our starter, then the calculus is a little bit different, at least about whether you want to put up with it. But no one's looking to put up with this as a backup, which is the most realistic path to him being on a roster and playing again at some point. And so for this to look like it did, it just doubles down on no one's going to do this for a backup.
Yeah, and I've been saying that for years. I don't think there's any sinister collusion thing going on here at all. I don't think there's some sinister blacklist. I don't think all these evil, mostly old white owners are, getting together saying we're going to keep this guy out of the league. I think really and truly what it's all about is nobody wants a hassle of it for a dude who hasn't played in 3 years. Nobody wants this. You don't need this. He's not worth it. And that's really and truly why he's not playing, sinister motives aside. And it's like when you show up at your NFL-sponsored workout in a Kunta Kinte shirt.
Kunta Kinte.
Kunta Kinte, sorry. I've actually never seen Roots, believe it or not. that is the main character from Roots, and so what he's doing is he's basically saying he's using a slave reference, comparing himself to a slave, which is just absurd when you're talking about a guy who's trying to make millions. It's ridiculous. And so none of that, all of that stuff collectively showed this was all a big joke. The NFL, for their part, I think had their motive, I think, was probably this is a way we can finally get this guy out of our hair. I don't think they really care about Colin Kaepernick. I think they just wanted to be able to say, hey, look, we tried. And that was it. So I think both sides had sinister motives. Not sinister. Both sides had self-serving motives on this thing.
Yeah.
In the story. And so I think this is the official end of Colin Kaepernick's chance to ever come back to the NFL, and I say thank God.
I say I agree with that assessment, although I take the opposite. I would like to see him play again. Even take everything else out of it, even from a football perspective, I would like to see if it would work. But we shall never know, most likely. Never say never, but I'm almost saying never. All right, with that, we are moving on to our next story, which actually is strangely related in that we know that Generation Z, which is actually the generation younger than millennials, because the dirty little secret about millennials is they're actually getting old. They're now, they're pushing 35. Everyone likes to think of them as kids, but they're actually aging rapidly here. And then often the generation behind them are called Generation Z. And the reality is that sports is nervous because, one, these folks are leading. I mean, they're not even leading the cord cutting. They're not even they're not existing in a world where there are cords. So they're almost post cord cutting. Often their parents are cord cutting to a large degree.
Yeah, that's us. That's you and I, not the kids.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're living in a world that doesn't even have that. And so they're not creating the next generation of sports fans, and more importantly, sports consumers, is something that these leagues, these networks, the advertisers are trying to figure out. And not only trying to figure out with sports, but in all media consumption. But the live aspect of sports definitely heightens that a little bit. I know that, the NFL's got problems translating to younger viewers, but they're certainly not the only ones. And so, Steve, tell us about a new, network isn't the right way, a new media platform that's looking to be able to create a sports media empire for that generation.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, so this comes from Front Office Sports. Earlier this month, November 18th, 2019, Overtime. So what they're calling a sports network, Overtime. The article is called Overtime aims to be the next ESPN for Generation Z. And like you, I was kind of struggling about what to call it, because it's not a network on TV. This is, I think, sort of an app on your phone, and on the internet that you can look at. And this is their market is high school sports. This is just fascinating to me, and it's also, I think, the step one of the monetization of high school sports, which is just makes everybody really thrilled, But so what this app is doing is it's putting a bunch of high school sports onto, they're taking the film clips from these high school sporting events and they're putting on this app, and so you've got, the next Zion Williamson. Everybody's going to know about it because it's all on Overtime. And so their market strategy is to get everybody who is a Generation Z, who, as Chris said, these are the people following the millennials, basically. The kids that are in junior high and high school now, they want all these kids to have Overtime, and so they want a bunch of buzz. There's a great quarterback out of, Oregon, high school in Oregon. Well, let's look him up on Overtime. They want Overtime to become the go-to platform for Generation Z for all things high school sports. And believe me when I say, if it works and this makes money, that it's going to expand. They're not going to just stick to high school sports, if this works. It's a very interesting concept. And what's most fascinating for people our age, I think, Chris, is they're not even making an effort to go to a television.
No.
We're not talking about a cable channel you can buy on cable or you can get on Hulu or whatever the case may be. This is strictly an app thing, because I think in today's world with kids like that, if you can't get it on your phone, it's going to be a failure. Simple as that. And so this is like it's a shame our buddy John isn't here, because I think this would be up his alley, this sort of thing. It is a first step into a new world, I think, of sports media consumption. And this is the exact type of thing that CBS, NBC, and Fox and ESPN are terrified of, is stuff like this.
For sure. Although the investors and founders of this probably would love to be purchased by one of those networks, is probably one of the ultimate goals. And
no doubt about that.
Very well could happen, because, those giant media conglomerates, they will build their own thing if they have to, but they would prefer to buy it and co-opt it. So we'll see. That'll be interesting to see who eventually buys over time, because I think that's the end game here. But a couple interesting things. One, younger generations, and I actually, I don't say this out of malice or even critique, although it may sound like it. They're much more interested in themselves, and by that I mean things that are of their age, their peers, doing things themselves rather than just consuming things. So I think the idea that you're starting with stuff that's contextually about them, high school sports, is interesting. I think it is a way to reach those younger generations. They're not as interested in just watching other things happen. They want more personal relevance. So that's smart in terms of understanding their demographic. And then two, this also means that if it works, that these sports fans will mature with these players, right? There's no doubt that a whole generation of NBA fans were because LeBron James was their age and in high school, and they grew up with that athlete. So I think the idea that you start earlier, you grow a bunch of sports fans because they know these players are tracking them through their career development is actually an interesting long game strategy for developing lifelong sports fans, which is ultimately the goal, right? The kids don't stay 16 forever. You want and Steve and I will probably have both a million stories of having our interest and love of these things cemented as youth. So they're trying to grow customers for decades, not for the next couple months. But if we also look at one interesting thing from this article, is you look at what's alternative metrics for success, like ratings are irrelevant to a large degree, although we still use them. But Overtime's Instagram audience has doubled during the past 6 months. It boasts higher engagement rates on Instagram than other sports media brands. So, now, this isn't official, like Nielsen hasn't figured this out, or there's not some other kind of independent agencies, but something with an Instagram engagement like that, in that space that's growing and growing fast, those are the kind of metrics that are going to start to matter. Those are the new ratings. And so they have some fundamentals that are pretty strong.
Yeah, and so what Overtime has done, I think that's fascinating from a media perspective, is they're really entering and creating their own marketplace. Okay, and I have kids in the house that are this age, and so when one of them will say, "Hey, have you heard of this basketball player?" And of course, I never have. Well, where they're getting it is just from YouTube. Okay, and it's like random clips from YouTube, and they'll see some basketball player in Iowa or wherever, and they'll come bring me a YouTube clip and I'll watch it and say, "Oh, good player." Well, Overtime is collecting all that, wants to collect all that stuff and present it in an organized fashion, and so no other site has done that. The closest there is to that are like these ratings. These high school ratings sites, and there's a couple of them. And like I do that sometimes. I'll go like around recruiting time. I'll go check out who are the 5-star recruits and whatnot. But this is like 10 steps beyond that. You're gonna find the highlights and every the star quarterback at a high school is going to be on here, and you're going to be able to know everything about this kid. Now you could argue that it might not be a good thing that we're turning high school kids into stars, and I think I'd probably agree with you, but it also is just a fact, and it's the way of the world. Think about, you mentioned LeBron James, and we can go to Kobe Bryant before him. Same thing. Kobe Bryant was a high school star because he was so good that, I knew about him in high school. I knew about LeBron James in high school. LeBron James was on the cover of Sports Illustrated as a high school senior, I believe. That's nothing. If Kobe Bryant and LeBron James are high school students in today's world, they would be the Overtime Network stars. And everybody would know them on a much wider platform, and I think that's where Overtime's going. I don't know if I like it necessarily, because again, I don't like the idea of turning high school kids into stars, but it's a brilliant marketing strategy, and I can't wait to see if it works.
Yeah, well, I mean, you remember ESPN used to show LeBron's high school games on their network.
They still do show high school games on. No, they show the McDonald's All-American Classic. They show some football games every once in a while, a few like big-name high school football games. But this is, again, I mean, that's nothing compared to what Overtime is talking about. And if you can only imagine how, if it succeeds and expands, you're right. I mean, if like ESPN or Disney, the evil mouse ears buys it or somebody else, and then incorporates the technology into it could be huge.
Yeah, and there's always going to be a place for the nerds to go and go deeper on this, and there, and that existed, when we were teenage nerds in this. You can always go deeper. There's, and especially now in today's media, there'll always be, you can always go down the YouTube rabbit holes, and there'll always be like the nerds out there that that are ranking high school players. Like that's always existed around recruiting time. But what this really is, and what the article starts to posit, is it really is the more consumer-friendly version. It is collecting the clip packages, right? The SportsCenter blew up because, you knew at 11 o'clock or whenever you watch the SportsCenter, you'd get the highlight packages. That was its thing. And so this isn't just another like high school ratings platform, a high school player ratings platform. This is like, hey, we're going to bring you the best of. You can be a pretty deep fan, but you don't have to go scour the internet or, to do this. You can click on your app and you can get your highlights. And that, that's scale, that's mass versus niche.
And by the way, if you guys think that we're just bringing this up because it's kind of a slow time of the year, that's just not true. This platform is getting 1 billion views per month.
That's staggering.
1 billion. That's just staggering. I mean, being the purveyor of a small Redskins website myself, I mean, 1 billion views is an unbelievable number. It's a serious amount of views a month. And so, I mean, and this is just a startup. It's not even that old. It's 3 years, So I think we're going to hear a lot more of Overtime in the coming years.
Yeah, and they're not interested in following high school sports. They're interested in developing generations of sports stars and then following them.
Exactly right. It's exactly right. Who is the high school, star point guard now? They want you to be following him through his whole life on Overtime from his journey from high school through the NBA.
Definitely. So they'll mature as their players do.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, this is fascinating. Super interesting. I think we'll check back in or see, and with those numbers, I wouldn't be surprised if they get purchased sooner than later.
Oh yeah, anything that has 1 billion on it means it's going to be bought.
It's so funny. This is a small aside, but it's just so interesting how these social media numbers or view numbers drive everything. There's a house not far from where I am in upstate New York that was an existing Airbnb, and one of the things, and it's for sale, and one of the things as part of the assets package for the sale of this home is that you also get its 15,000 Instagram followers. Like,
oh my god,
that's part of the sale. Well, if you're buying it to continue to do short-term rentals, then that's a pretty powerful advertising strain.
And by the way, just to be clear, because I don't think we really were, because we're just learning about this with this story mainly. Overtime is less app and more of what they're calling a distributed sports network. Okay, and so it's Overtime is collecting all these clips. And they're really what they're really doing is distributing them through where the kids are going today, which is Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and all that stuff. So it's less of something you're going to click on or turn the channel to, and more that you're going to get all the Overtime content through the channels that you're looking at anyway. Okay, just to be clear.
Awesome. So that's fun to watch. So we'll see. So if you care about who the next, if you're interested in scouting high school sports, there you go.
Overtime.
The monetization of high school sports.
That's what really, that honestly, that bothers me a lot. because these are children, and it's supposed to be amateur athletics. And if you can fast forward 15 years from now, if high school sports becomes what college sports is now, I just don't think that's good for. I don't think that's good for society. I don't think that's good for sports. Anything. If you're going to have, the big time, high school basketball and football teams making millions of dollars, on overtime sponsored media outlets and whatnot. I don't think that's in any way good for society at all. That's a much bigger question for a much bigger day. But I don't mistake my reporting this for me to think it's good, because I don't think it is.
And there are ways for them to grow their platform in there without necessarily doing that. But yes, it does open the doors.
Yeah, that's my point. It's not happening now, but forward to go into 2030 and let's talk about this then.
A lot to talk about in 2030. All right, so our next topic is a little bit our final topic, and it's kind of a fun one. And it may seem a little old. It might be stale tortilla chips, so to speak. Except that we had to give Steve time to be able to talk about the World Series and the baseball postseason. So, do you feel ready enough to even mention that happened?
I would like to say, first of all, that the Astros are cheaters who deserve their 2017 title to be vacated. And in my view, there was no 2019 World Series.
Go Nationals. It was a great moment. I enjoyed it immensely.
They didn't deserve what they... Don't, you're going to piss me off, and we haven't even gotten into the story. Don't.
See, we're not... It's too soon. So, let's go to...
Taco Bell.
Let's
talk about Taco Bell instead.
And what their promotion... What was it? Steal a base, grab a taco? What was the promotion exactly?
Yeah, that was it. If there's a base stolen in the World Series, then everybody got a free taco, and it was a free Doritos Loco taco. Okay, so here's the deal. Taco Bell has been a baseball sponsor forever, for a long time. 14 years ago, to be specific. And so Taco Bell is sitting around dreaming up, ways of using the World Series to their advantage. And sort of the idea here is they want to, rope in new generations of Taco Bell fans. And so, they know the home run is a big deal in baseball. But they wanted to have something sort of unique to Taco Bell. And so they came up with stolen bases. Stolen bases are also important. But now sort of everybody associates the stolen base with Taco Bell, and so they've accomplished their goal. And so what's interesting is that what they're trying to do, they're trying to target the 18 to 49 age demographic with this. And so the idea here is we offer everybody a free Doritos Loco Taco. They come in and get it. Nobody's going to come into Taco Bell and just get one free taco and leave. You're going to get a couple things and sample the menu, and they're going to rope in new fans. That's the point of this. And so that's why they're willing to spend advertising dollars on the free taco campaign. They're willing to give away a free 99-cent Dorito Loco Taco because they know you're going to buy more, and more importantly, they're going to grab at least some Taco Bell fans. And of course, and by the way, the Front Office Sports article, I already said that, didn't I? Yeah, Front Office Sports, they know that the demographic of MLB skews older. They already know that, and they're sort of going against type a bit to do this. But that's the point. If anybody was wondering, they want to grow Taco Bell fans, not just give everybody a taco.
And Taco Bell, this is strange, and not as much in 2019 America, but Taco Bell's brand, which really came to prominence in the 90s, was that they were kind of the alternative fast food. They were the edgy fast food, right? For no other reason that they'd serve tacos, not hamburgers, right? We're not talking, not that super radical, but it, and they had more kind of, youth-oriented marketing and, so they've always been, their brand has been the edgy fast food to some degree, or the alternative, right? And that, just because they've been around a long time and because tacos are much more part of the culture, strangely enough, than they were maybe in the 90s, like that edgy brand is sort of diminished. And, others have challenged that, and millennials and Generation Z eat way less fast food than older generations. So I think this is some way of reconnecting to what their core brand is, which is like, of course you don't celebrate the home run, just like you don't celebrate the hamburger. You celebrate the stolen base, the taco. So I think in some ways it makes sense to their sort of corporate identity, and also a corporate identity that they've actually kind of backslid on. So I think it's I think anything that continues to establish them, especially with those are the things that will still connect with young people as being, quote unquote, different, just because that's a hallmark of youth, no matter what generation. Interesting marketing.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting marketing, and they have created kind of a moment, right? Because when you think stolen base, you do think of Taco Bell, and so they've kind of done it. And just we're getting a bit off sports here, but this front office sports article goes into sort of addresses in a roundabout way Taco Bell's Generation Z problem by saying they're launching a vegetarian menu. Didn't know that, but according to this article, they're launching a vegetarian menu, and there's apparently a growing portfolio of what it calls Taco Bell Cantina stores that serve alcohol.
Yeah,
that I'd never heard of.
I've seen them. I've seen them in the wild.
Oh, have you? Okay, yeah, you're in New York. I'm in the suburbs, in Texas, so I haven't seen them, and so that's a way that Taco Bell's kind of growing. So I think big picture wise, it's a very good comparison you said when you said there's sort of the alternative fast food, because there's a lot of fast food now, but back in the 80s and 90s there wasn't. For those of you too young for that, it was really just McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, Jack in the Box. There's a very small subset of fast food. Now you have all sorts of things. Schlotzsky's does sandwiches. It's fast food. Taco Bell's tacos. There's a million of them. There's fast food salad places, really, if you want to go into that. And so Taco Bell, I think by doing this, they're keeping their alternative view. Let's forget about the home run. Let's talk about stolen bases. And they've linked themselves to the stolen base. They are roping in new customers. They've got interesting marketing people working for them. They really do.
No, and it's because they've had that challenge the whole time, right? Their business model started with that challenge. They had to, so they had to make a splash. They had to be seen. They had to transcend hamburgers, all of that kind of stuff. So, I think it is super interesting. I wish I had known. I wish their marketing didn't reach me. I would have taken advantage of a free taco, but I laughed.
Well, see, the problem is also, to be fair, there's time limits for the taco. What I have noticed, I can't remember it doesn't say the hours, but the hours are something like 2 to 4. It's not like dinner time, and so I always miss it because I'm never around or never eating. But that's sort of also another, frankly, that's also the alternative hours are also targeting young people.
Right, that's after school.
Yeah, exactly. You and I, if we're going to stop at Taco Bell, it's going to be at 6 or 7 o'clock. And we're going to grab dinner for everybody. Well, the younger crowd, who also, by the way, doesn't have a lot of money, is just because they're kids, they're going to hit Taco Bell after school, and they may get the free Dorito Loco and a Coke and another taco, and it'll cost them $3, and they're happy. And if they do that enough, then they're going to be Taco Bell fans. So it's very interesting.
It's so fun.
Now, it's a shame they didn't have a World Series to actually market this in. That's, the fact that the World Series didn't happen,
all that marketing money lost.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Steve, I love your ability to just not acknowledge things.
Listen, I'm not the only one in the world who didn't see this. They had a joke, kind of a comic, alternative reality World Series that didn't reflect reality. But that's another matter.
Oh, yes.
Go Dodgers.
Go Nats. The beauty of sports. All right, well, I think that brings us to the end of our run today. Steve, what is in the Hogstye universe people would want to pay attention to?
Okay, first of all, we are a part of Big Heads Media. If you want to listen to a podcast on any topic you could possibly dream up, from sports to pop culture to news to anything else, it's all there. The ad that you heard at the beginning of the show is courtesy of Big Heads Media. So there's that. We've got the Hogstye, of course. We are in the death throes of a lost Redskins season via the Hogstye podcast. Rick Snyder's doing his Seasons of Discontent show, which is his look at all things Washington, D.C. sports and life. And that's, by the way, his way of getting away from having to talk about the lost Redskins season for 16 straight weeks. There's that. And, of course, we've got all of our good Britain content on the network as well.
Awesome. And if you follow at the Hogsty on Twitter, Hogsty's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, right? Isn't it on all platforms at this point?
Yeah, it is. We don't do much on Facebook, but we do have a Facebook thing. I think it's called Hail to the Hogs, because I think somebody had the Hogstye Network on Facebook. But to be honest, we don't do a lot on Facebook. But Instagram and Twitter, we're active on, especially Twitter.
Yes. All right. And you can find me at ChrisLarry33, or it's just Business Pod. We'd love interaction. So let us know if you have any thoughts, topic ideas. Maybe we should do a mailbag episode at some point. That might be kind of fun. All right.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, so with that, we will see you in 2 weeks. Enjoy this weekend of sports. Our next weekend of sports, whatever. Enjoy it.
It's already over now.
All right, bye.